step number 1, we're going to want to remove the fuel injector pigtails. The wires were snipped from them from LKQ when they removed the engine from the car that it was in. Specifically, this was from a 2004 Tahoe. This style needed a little bit of a pick tool. Sometimes you can get them off by hand, but the pick made it much easier to remove. There's going to be 4 on each side, 8 total because there's 8 cylinders. Removing the intake manifold, these are held on by 8mm bolts. The injectors are attached to the intake manifold, so those will be removed with it when you pull it off. Removing the water pump, this is held on by 10mm bolts and the water pump pulley stays attached to this. Removing the knock sensors and the knock sensor harness, there is salt in these cavities of the engine. Oil pressure sensor removal, it's 1 5/16. Camshaft position sensor removal, 10mm. Valley cover removal, 10mm bolts. Removing the actual knock sensors, those are 22mm. Moisture and debris gets trapped under the intake manifold, but no salt made it into the engine if you're curious at this point because of how dirty it is. Valve cover removal, these are held on by 8mm bolts. This is the coolant crossover tube, this is held on by 10mm. This is a valve train organization tray. Whenever you're doing valve trains, you want to make sure each piece goes back in the same location it came off. You're going to want to break the rocker arms loose first and then remove the rest of the bolts with the 8mm impact. Rocker arms are removed. Now you can remove the push rods and then repeat on the other side. Removing the junkyard tape used to cover the exhaust. Then we're going to loosen the head bolts with 15mm socket. You cannot fit your hand inside the head to get those bolts out, so make sure you use a magnet. These are 10mm head bolts up top. removing the heads from the block as well as the gaskets. This is a lifter up close. We're gonna get some needle nose and pull those out. The lifters rest on the camshaft, and as the camshaft rotates, the lifters move up and down, which that force is being directed to the push rods, and that movement is sent to the rocker arms, which results in the opening and closing of the valves. This can get noisy with these engines because there's a small oil passage through the lifter, and if it gets clogged, it can cause what you call lifter tick.
As you can see here, the oil dipstick tube just broke off inside of the block. Right there. So that's going to be fun to get out. I'm going to soak this with a little bit of penetrating oil, see if I can't break that thing free. PB Blaster works great to break free any seized or rusted nuts or bolts. In this case, this dipstick tube that's seized in here, I'm going to let this stuff soak in there and see if I can't break it free.
To remove the oil pan, you're going to have 10mm bolts all the way around. Once you slide the oil pan off, you're going to be looking at the windage tray that's held on by 13mm bolts, as well as the oil pickup, which is held on by 10mm bolts. Removing the crankshaft bearing caps, these are 13mm bolts, using the end of a hammer to tap on the end of the rod to get the piston and rod to slide out of the cylinder. Then you're going to rotate the harmonic balancer crankshaft pulley to line up with the bolts so that you can remove them with a socket, because it does get a little bit tight in there. You're going to repeat for all 8 cylinders. You're going to need a 15mm socket to unbolt the main caps. This holds the crankshaft to the block. You're gonna have a 10mm socket to remove the side bolts attached to the main caps.
Got the other side of the oil pickup tube right here. I'm gonna see if I can pound it out from the inside of the motor. Beautiful.
With the motor off the stand, we're going to remove the rear main cover. The rear main cover is held on by 10mm bolts. We're going to tap to break free, remove the gasket. To remove the crankshaft pulley, we have a jaw style puller. I have an Amazon link in the description to an awesome list of tools for something like this. Next, you're going to remove the timing cover and the gasket. Then we can remove the oil pump, removing the timing chain and gear as well. You have the camshaft retainer plate, that's a 10mm. Then you're going to slide out the camshaft very carefully. Then you're going to want to move up a little bit to the main caps holding the crankshaft to the block. And then you can remove the crankshaft and the bearings. And then we're going to clean up the block and it'll be ready to take it to a machine shop to clean it, bore it, and resurface the deck. Hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications so you don't miss the next episode of this series. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you. See you in the next one. Oh, and don't forget about CarMastery.com. Follow Randall9 on Instagram. Appreciate you.